Paul Falcone, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks, John. Good to be with you.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the LA area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about recruiting and interviewing in a tight labor market and how to identify high potential hires. I think this is a super important, timely topic as we're in interesting times. Now, the labor market itself ebbs and flows in terms of, the tightness and the labor supply demand issues. Um, right now it's interesting because with AI, I think a lot of companies are hesitant in the hiring space. They're kind of trying things out. They want to they're in a wait and see mode. And so I wouldn't say it's a super tight labor market generally, but in terms of high tech jobs, STEM jobs, healthcare jobs, there's still segments that are incredibly intense in terms of tight labor market and frankly organizations are have major skills gaps, right? And so in that kind of an environment, um, it's just important. It's always important, but it's extra important when we have skills gaps and labor gaps in particular areas that we're good in the recruiting space and the holistic applicant experience as they try to work with our organization. So how do we find those great people? How do we bring them on so that they can contribute to the organization's success and providing, quality products and services to the market and adding value? So this is what we're going to explore together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Paul's bio with everybody. Paul Falcone is a renowned expert on effective hiring, performance management, and leadership development, specializing in helping companies build higher performing leadership teams. He spent the last 3 decades in human resources executive roles at organizations including Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, NBCUniversal, Time Warner, and City of Hope Cancer Center Hospital. What a wonderful background. It's a real pleasure to be sitting down with you and having this conversation. Anything you would like to highlight before we dig on in?
No, thanks for the intro, John. The funny thing is, I always kind of lived dual lives. During the day, I was doing my full-time work, and at night, I was a writer. So I had written for years as a columnist for SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, and I've written now 17 books with the American Management Association and HarperCollins Leadership. So that was the dual Paul Falcone that was going on after 6 o'clock at night, but that's kind of how I built out my career over the last 3 decades.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And share with the audience. I'll give you a chance towards the end too to share more about this. But what's your most recent book? And yeah, and why are you so passionate about writing? 17 books, that's a lot.
17 books is a lot. And people ask me, how could you come up with all the content? And I tell them, believe me, I'm not that creative. It just kind of finds you when you're in human
Mm.
resources. And I've written my most recent book is on leading through crisis. My
Hmm.
flagship book is called 101 Tough Conversations to Have with Employees.
Yeah,
I mean, what I've always done, John, is I look at where the gaps are. It's like even if you have an MBA from a top 10 school, you're learning about organizational development, organizational behavior, organizational design, but they're not teaching leadership in the trenches. And I think focusing on the how is what gives people more self-confidence to become more effective leaders. And I think that's where my books have filled a gap over the
yeah,
decades.
yeah.
So.
Awesome. Definitely needed. We need really good um, content that can bridge the gap, between, research foundation and actual practical application and the lived experience of leaders in organizations, like real life application. I'm an academic, I'm a professor, like I'm all for academic research, but we also need to make sure that that gets translated in a way that's actually beneficial and actually useful. And frankly, academia has not always been very good at doing that. And so uh, I really appreciate the work that you do and others like you to really help make a difference and a meaningful impact within organizations. Because managers, leaders, they just get up in the morning generally trying to do the best they can. They want to help their organizations be successful. They want their people, their teams to be successful, and but they're also caught up in the daily grind, putting out fires, just all the hecticness, all of the crazy disruption. And I think that's why people tune in to this podcast is, they just want ideas on like what can I do to just make even an incremental positive change, and a difference for the people in my life. So I think it's a noble cause and something that I think is very much needed. Well, with all that said on the outset, let's dig on in to this the recruiting and interviewing piece and taking it from a holistic applicant experience perspective. It's been my experience in recent months, the last 6 months or a year, uh, that a lot of organizations are kind of falling down in this area. And there's probably a variety of reasons for that. I'd love to pick your brain on that. But I think at least one of the reasons is because of the ebbs and flows in the labor market and because of AI tools, more and more organizations are leaning so much on those tools to do screening and recruiting tasks. And so a lot of applicants, a lot of people looking for jobs are just feel like they're sending stuff out into the void and they're not really having a personal touch. They're not hearing back from people. And that holistic applicant experience is generally negative for a lot of people right now, which does not bode well in the long run for organizations as they're trying to improve their employer brand, as they're trying to attract and retain really great talent. It's a bad look on the outset, to have that kind of a negative experience. So what do you think are some of the key things driving, that negative employer employee, uh, talent pipeline experience?
So a few things, John. The technology is going through the roof. We know that. There's an
Yeah.
app for that. There's new AI apps coming out, new AI platforms, but you can't replace the human connection. So what my advice to employers, and this is general about interviewing or front time, first time upfront discussions on a telephone with a candidate, when you finally make that human connection, make sure it counts. Too many times people jump right into the Q&A. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your greatest strength. Why should we? It's the relationship isn't ready for that. Spend 5 minutes with a candidate,
Mm,
asking them about themselves, and it could be as simple as, Paul, what brings you to us today? What's important to you at this point in your career?
hmm hmm
Why would making a change right now make sense for you in terms of your overall career progression? And what are the ingredients you're looking to put in the soup, so to speak, that would make you feel really engaged and really satisfied with a new decision to join a company like ours? Even in the interview process later down the road, I'll usually, before I get to the offer stage, I'll say, how would you explain, if you accept this job right now, how would you explain it to a prospective employer 3 to 5 years from now? In other words,
mm.
how would this make sense in terms of building out your career progression? And um, how do you put all the pieces together that this fits your longer term career, excuse me, trajectory? One second.
Yeah, no problem.
The idea is, for me, John, you've got to make that human connection, even to ask them up front. I know you've been doing this now. I'm looking at your resume for 8 years. What's guaranteed to still make you smile about doing what you do? It's so funny when you make that human connection, you stand out from your peers. So many times people jump into the formal Q&A, they never get to know the real candidate. The reality is, if you can build trust with me as a stranger within 30 seconds, to the point where I'll say, you know what, John, I normally don't say this in an interview, but, and once they say that, you've got the real person. Now, they're not going to do it every time, but you're creating the space for people to feel comfortable. And it's not just about what you can do for the organization. It's what's important for you at this point in your career. And how could coming to our company help? And what are the two or three criteria you're using in selecting your next company? Where does this all fit in? You spend time, just a couple of minutes, talking to someone about themselves on that front end phone call, that front end in-person meeting. That's the game changer. That starts the whole idea of professional development, career development. This is someone who's interested in me, not just what I can do for the organization, but how that organization can help me get ahead in my career. And I think that that's one of the major things that's lacking out there today.
Yeah, well, I love that. That personal touch is always, sorry, I was muted. That personal touch is always going to be important, and it is largely lacking, in the modern context. And we're just all human. Like we want to have human connection. We want to be able to relate to the person, sitting on the other side of the desk or the screen from us. And we want to be able to do something that's not only, of course you're there for an interview because you're going to try to add value to the organization. But they should be adding value to you and to your career. You're devoting your blood, sweat, and tears to them, uh, and of course they're paying you, but it's a big commitment, and it's often very life changing. And so making sure it's reciprocal that way, and hiring managers, interviewers, recruiters can, just a little bit goes a long way in helping others feel like, yes, this is actually a good fit both directions, and it's going to be something that's actually going to be useful to me in my career. And yeah, that's powerful. And like you said too, just getting to the real person. I mean, that's what everyone wants, right? Like when you're interviewing, you don't want just canned answers where someone is just telling you what you want to hear. You want to actually know the real person and know what they can bring to the table. And so setting, the tone and putting people at ease and giving them an opportunity to be genuine and authentic around what you're looking for and the fit and all those sorts of things, that's going to be really, really important.
And it changes the tone of the whole meeting. Because once you started on that level, it brings everything down into the weeds, so to speak, which is where we all live and breathe. It's forget about all the facades and the Q&A and all that stuff. And I think people are looking for that level of connection. And because it influences the tone and the tenor of the rest of the interview and the onboarding experience, man, what a difference it makes. If they've got two offers and one pays a lot more than the other, I'll tell you, they'll think about the other if it's with that boss who cared about their career and professional development. We know Gen Y and Gen Z, they're the most studied generational cohorts in world history. We would be smart to look at what those criteria are, those priorities, and build them into our corporate plan, our corporate culture. And in every survey I've seen, they want career and professional development. So
Mhm.
pull that into the pre-employment process, and you'll have a friend for life. You'll have a very loyal person to you because, it's about them. It's not just about what they can do for the company.
Yeah, and it is very much always about coaching, mentoring, career development, career progression for younger generations. And sometimes they get a bad rap for that. Sometimes people, feel like, oh, they're entitled. They're not willing to pay their dues. Those sorts of things. And I'm like, maybe. And sometimes, every generation has entitled people. But I think generally they just, you know, they they've been told their whole lives, that they should be seeking feedback, they should get coaching, and now they're there. Now they are hungry for it and they don't get it. And so if they don't get it, whose fault is that? It's just good leadership to be able to provide that kind of mentoring, coaching, career path development, and all of those sorts of things for individuals, regardless of life stage or career stage that they're at. And so I think it's too lazy to just say, oh, this younger generation, they're just too entitled. It's just a lazy response. And oftentimes it's really just trying to cover up the symptoms of bad leadership. And so yeah, if we can just recognize and acknowledge that ultimately, that's like the main part of the gig when I'm a manager or a leader, to like develop my people, build my bench strength, help them to be successful, because when they're successful, I'm successful. Like if we can understand that, then it definitely starts all the way at the beginning of the pipeline of the employee experience, right? All the way in the applicant experience, all the way through the recruitment, the interviewing stage. If they get selected, the onboarding, in those early months when they're in the new position, all of that is so vital to the success of that person, and whether or not they're going to mesh with the organization, with your team, and whether or not they're going to stick around, right? Because again, right now with the ebbs and flows in labor market, maybe people are less willing to jump ship at this very moment, because think of the uncertainty. But people have options, especially the great employees. They always have options to go other places, and you better utilize them and help them to feel connected and needed, wanted, valued. That they have opportunities to contribute in meaningful ways. That better happen right away, otherwise they're gone, right?
And the funny thing to your point, John, is it continues through the onboarding. Since you
Hmm.
said the magic word, stay with me just a minute. I always say you need to have these meetings. This can be you as their manager or your boss, the manager's manager, so to speak, like a skip level meeting, a department head, something on those lines. You meet with the new hire at day 30, at day 60, at day 90, just to check in. You've got a series of questions. They're going to get a little bit more profound, obviously, the longer they're in there and they've rolled up their sleeves. But you spend that one-on-one time and you're asking things about who is most helpful on the team. And you've got an objective set of eyes here. What could we be doing differently? How could we have set your expectations for the role differently than it really is? Are people making you feel welcome? Are you making others feel welcome? But you've got a little short script at day 30, day 60, day 90. But at day 90, here's critical. You can say, you know what, John, I've enjoyed these little meetings with you, these shorter meetings. I want to do something now that's a little different. Not in 30 days, but in 90 days, like quarterly. I want you to schedule time on my calendar and I want you to set the agenda for the meeting. But it's basically a meeting about you and your career and professional development and anything else that's important to you. You don't have to put anything in writing, but you're more than welcome to. But I want to have these touch base meetings because even though we do an annual review, quote unquote, in our organization, I kind of consider it built around quarterly increments, quarterly meetings. And
Hmm.
again, you're an adult, you set the time on the calendar, you set the agenda. My job is simply to listen and coach. But are you okay with that? Do you agree? Do you see why I'd want to do that? And can you see the benefit of it? And again, it just cements this idea of, wow, this organization doesn't mean I'm going to promote in 90 days. Organizations have been getting flatter for 30 years. But
Yeah.
the reality is they want more responsibility. They want to learn their craft. They want to master their trade. And what better than either in that case having their boss, or in that case it would be their boss, but even in the beginning having their boss's boss take the time to get to know them. These are the things that get missed out there because we're all so busy chasing our tails with our hair on fire, which I understand. But boy, you can't spend a better 30 minutes at day 30, day 60, and day 90, and you'll really get a feel for what's going on in your department. Then you've shifted this achievement mindset. You're building an achievement mindset where people will come to you. It's not putting more time, no, there's no more work for you to do. Simply set aside a half hour. Some will come to you with spreadsheets and Gantt charts and letters of recommendation. It gives them a chance to shine and it builds that achievement mindset. It builds their self-confidence. And that's really the key to that whole first year with a new hire.
Yeah, well, I love that. And you're right. Like everyone's going to approach it differently, but they take ownership over those meetings. And their check-in meetings, another way to think of it though is they're also stay interviews, right? So we do exit interviews when people leave, and usually, they're leaving, because they're kind of not super happy with how things have been. They get an intriguing offer somewhere else, and they're stolen away, and then you sit down and do an exit interview with them. It's too late at that point. Like they might give you some feedback, um but honestly you've lost them. And so like you should be doing stay interviews. And what you're describing, not only are these check-ins just great, from a managerial leadership perspective to know more about your team, get insights, know your people, all of that is, super valuable. You get to support your person more, right? But they function as stay interviews because now that this person feels seen, they feel heard, they feel like you value their input, and like you said, it may or may not actually result in any like faster career progression in terms of promotions or whatever, but it builds trust. And when trust is built, then you have an opportunity to lean into different projects or take on different responsibilities within your role, within your existing role. All of those things really matter. It just creates a much more dynamic environment where people feel seen and heard and valued, right? And ultimately, again, if you're wanting to attract and retain the really best people in particular, not so hard to retain not great people because they know they don't have a lot of options, but like great people, they always have options. They always could go do something else. And so why should they stick with you, especially if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel stretched or that they have the opportunity to develop? And so this signals very clearly that all of those things are true, that we do value you, that we want your contributions, and there will be opportunity for that as time continues to roll on.
And the funny thing, John, I'll add to that too. Leadership goes through the heart. Leadership is an emotional connection. When you think of the best boss you've ever had, People say, oh, it's someone who made me feel confident about what I was doing, made me feel like I had a seat at the table. What I was doing really mattered, cared about me personally. And it's almost like take that very simple prism. Think about the best boss you've ever had. It really comes down to two words, character and caring. Their
Hmm.
character is the trust, the respect, the listening, the empathy. The caring, look, we even in the surveys about Gen Y and Gen Z, they want to work for a management team that cares about them personally.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
boomer, so did I. It's just they didn't study my generation back in those days
Right.
like they do today. But the reality is, think of that simple prism of am I paying that forward? Am I being someone's favorite boss? And it's like it talks about employee engagement and discretionary effort and an achievement mindset and selflessness and all that kind of stuff. When I think of the best boss I've ever had, it was Mark Taylor at Nickelodeon. He was my boss. He was the general manager. I would follow that man into battle. I would take a bullet for that man. I would do anything for him, not because I had to, but because I wanted to.
Hmm.
And that's the difference when you talk about people operating at 110% or they're not going to leave to go somewhere else if all of those career needs are being met, not for like 20%. 20% after taxes is nothing. And then I could risk losing Mark Taylor and then going to work for someone who spits fire and throws chairs. I'm not taking the risk. I'm happy right here, right now. And the funny thing is at Nickelodeon, we had very little turnover. We had
Yeah.
very few employee relations problems. People knew it was expected of them. They were all part of that. Mark was always out and about, running around. He was management by walking around. It was that kind of thing. He knew people by name. He really set the profile. He set the tone for the whole organization. And I always learned from the best. He really was the best. And it's so good to see how that happens. But it's not that hard. And it doesn't take that much more energy. It's just about your character and your caring. We're all worried about what we're doing all the time with our hair on fire and our, chasing our tails. The reality is to be someone's best boss, you just got to be a certain way. It's who you are that drives what you do, not vice versa. And I think that's what misses awareness out there too many times.
Yeah. That discretionary effort piece that you mentioned, uh, it's so important. Like it was all the rage, I don't know, a couple years ago to talk about quiet quitting and, some of these sorts of things. I think that fad terminology has faded a little bit, in terms of what people are constantly talking about. But the reality is all of that's still true. Like you still have people who, have psychological withdrawal, they've checked out, they're quiet quitting, they're looking for another job while they're out your job, those sorts of things. You have people who, doing the bare minimum. Like the old quote, I don't remember the exact quote from the movie Office Space, 25 years ago or something. The guy sits down with the consultants across the table and he's like, I just all I do is enough to not lose my job. You know, he's like, and that's the reality. Like a lot of people have lived that. And sometimes it's because you're lazy. Sometimes it's because, you don't want to work hard. But I've also seen it where star players get to that space, right? Because they're just so discouraged and frustrated and they just don't see any point anymore. Like they've tried, they beat their head against the brick wall over and over and over again. There's no point. And so now they're just biding their time, right? And that is death, for the organization and for the team when that starts to happen. And so on the flip side, that just like tapping into that discretionary effort where someone's like excited when they get up in the morning, they're excited to go to work, they're giving you their best, they're not distracted, they're getting into flow state, they're just producing and collaborating and innovating. That I get excited just saying this, like that's the environment I want to be in. That's how I want to work. And that's how especially top players, A players, they want to be in that kind of an environment. And so tap into that discretionary effort, value and reward it. And if you do that, and if you can demonstrate that early on in the recruitment process and then actually, walk the walk and see it through the employee experience, you won't have any problem keeping good people. Because it's not a super common thing. It's rare to like you had at Nickelodeon. Unfortunately, that's not commonplace. Like that's not what everyone experiences everywhere. And so when you find it, it's special and you don't want to throw that away, even if someone's offering you, a few percent more salary or something to go jump ship and go somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, very true. I do think the funny thing is we make this a lot harder than we need to. And I write for a management audience. My training is always for the management side. But even if you're an individual contributor, this is about your leadership brand, your communication style, your team building and collaboration abilities. Those are, that's really what CEOs are looking for. You can do a quick Google search of what is CEO priorities in 2025. You'll get lists plenty, but they keep coming back to the same things. They want emotional intelligence, the ability to
Yeah.
bond with people. They want creativity and innovation. Well, stop right there on that one. Too many managers out there think that to be an effective leader, you have to be feared. Right, wrong. That may have made sense 100 years ago when the parts of the Model T were coming down the conveyor belt. That doesn't exist anymore in a knowledge economy. Your people do know more than you do. They're closer to the customer. They're closer to the systems. They're closer to the roadblocks. Your job is to tease out of them as a coach, to tease out of them the 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 direction for your organization, which treats them like adults, makes them feel respected, makes them feel like they're moving the needle. But you have to kind of create the space to make it safe for people to do so if you really still believe that people need to be afraid of you. And now there's a difference between management and staff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're their buddies, but I don't think managing by fear is going to get you where you need to be. The other thing a lot of them need to unlearn out there, to me, John, is this idea of recognition. You mentioned it's kind of like the psychic income that keeps people happy. Give it freely. It costs you nothing. In an environment where there are fewer vertical promotional opportunities, there are limited budget pools. And the reality is there's so much noise out there. We became adrenaline junkies going through the pandemic. And here we are now in 2025. We're roughly 3 years past the pandemic. That experience has kept us in, fine shape for the craziness that we're going through in today's world, but it's not sustainable. The burnout level is really, really high. People can't leave it at the door when they come in the morning. So the reality is you have to make that space where people can find their peace of mind. And that's the key question I ask managers when they're talking with their employees one-on-one is, are you able to do your very best work every day with peace of mind?
Mm.
And you'll be surprised. Somehow, when you just add the words with peace of mind, they talk. They'll say, well, you know what, John, I wasn't planning on saying anything. I mean, I wasn't going to complain, but since you're asking, no, not always. And now you've got a chance. Well, do tell. Tell me what I'm missing and tell me what we need to be doing differently. And now you've got a trusting relationship. It's built on respect. It's built on listening to the other person. It's not fear, it's trust. But people will give discretionary effort and they'll take the risk necessary for innovation and creativity if they feel like their boss has their back and the rest of the team has their back. We've lost the ability as a society to sit around the campfire and pass wisdom from the elders to the younger generation. We're too busy. Our hair's on fire. We're looking at our phones. We need to that's what a staff meeting is for. It's that place for people to sit and kind of learn and kind of think about how to reinvent what we're doing so that it's more efficient and it's more effective and we can celebrate it more and we could lighten up. We all need more enlightenment these days. It's too heavy out there. We live in a 24/7 news cycle. It's like we need to pull this down a little bit and actually have fun at work. So to the degree that you can do that, you will easily become someone's favorite boss. And that little prism of, are you someone's favorite boss? Think about the best boss you've ever had. Are you paying that forward? All of a sudden, it all comes together.
Yeah, I love it. Paul, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I know at the time I need to let you go here in a minute, but before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your books, and then give us the final word for today.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, John. Sure. So my name is Paul Falcone, and my website is paulfalconehr.com because I came up through the ranks. But it has links to my HarperCollins page, my Amazon page. It has free chapter downloads of all my books. I've got a blog so you can have some fun with it, but easiest way. And on LinkedIn, I'm just Paul Falcone 1. So if anyone wants to send me a LinkedIn invite or visit the website, it's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Again, Paul, it's been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Paul can do for you. Check out the books, the many articles, of all the great resources. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.